Hi, in today's lecture, we will also learn about finding the limit of when we substitute the value, we get the value of the limit is 0 over 0. In the previous lecture, we know that if it's 0 over 0, then we have to use factorization. But in this lecture, we will look at another method of finding the value of the limit, which is multiplication of conjugates method. We use this method whenever the function is related to cert. Let's go ahead to the examples. Example 1. Find the limit of function cert x minus 1 over x minus 1 as x approaches to 1. And how to solve this? When you substitute in the value of 1 into the x, what you'll get is cert 1 minus 1 over 1 minus 1. On top you get 0, and below you also get 0. This is in the form of 0 over 0. So you have to factorize. But since there is a cert here and there's nothing for you to factorize for this question, what you have to do is you have to do the multiple of conjugates. Alright, so how to multiply the conjugates? You have learned this in chapter 1 if I'm not mistaken. So you have to multiply the conjugates. The conjugate that we should look at is not the denominator, but the one with the certs. So we have to multiply with exactly the same functions. So the first one is cert x, follow cert x, and behind we have positive 1, so follow that. And conjugate means we have to multiply with the opposite sign. So if the original sign is minus, we have to multiply with plus. Make sure you multiply with the same numerator and denominator, because this just simply means the total is 1. When we multiply with 1, we are not changing the value of the actual question. We are just changing the form of the question. It's like 1 ringgit is also equal to 100 cents. We are just changing the form from 1 ringgit to the form of 100 cents. So that's what we are doing. We are not changing the value. So how to multiply this? This is just multiplication. Multiply cert with cert. Cert x times cert x is cert x squared. Whenever squared means square root, you can cancel this off. That's why it's x power 1 here. Next, cert x times 1, you get cert x. Negative 1 times cert x is negative cert x. Negative 1 times positive 1 is negative 1. Divide with these two factors. Divide with these two functions. Do we have to expand the denominator? That's a tip here. You don't have to expand the denominator. Why? You'll just waste your time because it's not necessary, and it's faster if you just substitute the value of x inside. Okay, but why is it for the numerator we have to expand? Well, it's not for all of the numerators that we have to expand. We only have to expand for the conjugate partner. Like this. This is square root of x minus 1, and we multiply with its conjugate. So that's one that we have to expand. But if let's say the function given is like this. Now, square root of x minus 1 is at the denominator. So when it's like this, we have to, of course, follow the same functions. The first function is square root of x, and then behind is just 1. Remember, conjugate means opposite sign. So if it's minus on the left side, on the right side it should be plus. Multiply with the same, exactly the same function on top. So where should we expand now? You should expand at the denominator, because we find the conjugate from the denominator function. Okay? So this is where at the numerator you don't have to expand. Just follow and copy it down. But at the denominator, you have to expand. Okay? After that, simplify your numerator. Cert x minus cert x is 0. You're left with x minus 1. And then, when it's x minus 1, you have to simplify and cancel off with the denominator x minus 1 factor as well. So when you cancel that off, what's left is just 1 at the numerator. And denominator is still square root of x plus 1. Notice that we still have the word lim here. Why is the word lim still there? That's because we still have the x in our function. So as long as we have not substituted the value of x into the function, that's where our lim word stays. So after that, just substitute the value of 1 into our function, simplified function, and you will get 1 over square root of 1 plus 1, and that is 1 over 2. Next example, find the following limit. Find the limit of x minus 1 divided with square root of x minus 1. When you try to substitute the value of 1 into the x, what do you get? You will get 0 over 0. Right now, you have learned about two methods when you get 0 over 0. The first one is to use factorization. The next one is to multiply conjugate. So which one is it that we have to use for this question? Well, we have to use multiply conjugates. Why? Because we have surd in this question. There is a surd x here. So we have to multiply the conjugate. And what is the conjugate that we have to multiply for this question? It's the function with the surd. So at our denominator, this is our function with the surd. And what would be our conjugate? Remember, just copy the function down. We have square root of x and we have 1. The conjugate will be just the opposite sign. So if there's a minus in the middle, conjugate will be plus. And to multiply with conjugate, you have to multiply the denominator and also the numerator with the same conjugate. And then expand. But remember my tip that I have given you. Only expand the conjugate partners. So the conjugate is just square root of x times square root of x. These two factors at the denominator are the ones that we should expand. But the numerator, you don't have to expand. Furthermore, if you expand, then you can't see what is it that you have to simplify. Right, after you expand the denominator, what's left is, you can cancel off surd x minus surd x, and you have x minus 1 at the denominator. So as you can see, if you expand the numerator, you will not see this x minus 1 factor. And then you won't know that x minus 1 can be cancelled off with the denominator x minus 1. So do not expand your numerators. If let's say you have expanded it, make sure at this step you have to factorize x minus 1 again. And cancel off x minus 1. What's left is surd x plus 1, and then just substitute a value of 1. And you have your answer as 2. Next, question B. Try to substitute the value 0 into the function. What you get is 0 over 0. Because 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 minus 1 is 0 over 2 times 0 is 0. So whenever it's 0 over 0, you have only two options. Whether to use factorization method or to multiply the conjugates. Remember, when to multiply conjugates is whenever we have surds in the function. And we do have a surd in this function. So that means we have to multiply conjugates. And how to multiply conjugate? Just look at the function with the surd. Multiply with exactly the same function, which is 3x plus 1. And then 1. But just change the sign in the middle. So if it's minus, change it to plus. Multiply with the same function on top and below. So just expand the numerator for this question. And what you get is 3x plus 1 minus 1. A faster way to expand is you can use the formula a squared minus b squared, because this factorization is simply a minus b times a plus b. So conjugate is always in the form of minus and plus. So for this question, our a would be square root of 3x plus 1, and our b is positive 1. In the middle, there's a minus, and then here is a plus. So you can use the formula of a squared minus b squared and simply just replace a with square root of 3x plus 1 and then square it, and b is 1. So 1 squared. You can simplify this. Square root meets square, and 1 square is just 1. Simplify that, and you're left with 3x at the numerator. Remember, do not expand the denominator for this question. When you try to substitute your value of 0, now what you get is still 0 over 0. This means you need to factorize or multiply with conjugates. But you have just multiplied your conjugates. So that means maybe you need to factorize, or maybe there's something that you have not cancelled off. And as you can see, at the numerator you have x, and denominator you also have x. But you have not simplified this function yet. So you have to simplify the function before you substitute your value of x. When you simplify, what you get is just 3 over 2 square root of 3x plus 1 plus 1. And then substitute your value of 0 inside the x. What's left is just 3 over 4. That's your answer. Now take a look at example 3. First step is always to substituting your value of x into the function. And what you'll get here is 0 over 0. So remember, when it's 0 over 0, you have two choices, whether to use factorization method or to multiply with conjugates. Remember, when the question has surds, you have to multiply with conjugates. And this question has surd at the denominator. So the conjugate would be copy the same surd and the function inside it. The sign in the middle is minus here, so opposite of minus is plus, and behind is 5. So just copy the same value on top and also below the fraction, and then multiply it with the function given in the question. Right, now, what's the tips that I have given you? Do you have to expand the numerator or the denominator now? Look at where your conjugate is. The function that you have conjugated is the one at the denominator. That means you just have to expand your denominator functions. Do not expand your numerator. So just write x minus 7 times with square root of 3x plus 4 plus 5 into brackets. And then to expand the denominator, remember you can just use the formula a squared minus b squared. So your a is square root of 3x plus 4. When you square it, the square root cancels off. And your minus with 5 squared. 5 squared is 25. After you have simplified, you try to substitute your value of 7 inside the x. But still you get 0 over 0. If you still get 0 over 0, that means there's a problem because you have not simplified it yet. You have multiplied with your conjugate, but you have not simplified until you cancel off a factor. So remember, whenever you get 0 over 0, after you have factorized or after you have multiplied with conjugate, what you have to do next is you have to simplify. Or in an easier way to remember this is you have to cancel a factor at least. If after factorization or after conjugate you have not cancelled one factor, of course you will still get 0 over 0. So check your working for your multiple of conjugates here. You have multiplied with your conjugates, but you have not cancelled off a function. You have not simplified the function. So how to cancel off the function? You see that we have x minus 7 here. And remember the tips that I've given to you in example 2. If you get 0 over 0 still, that means you have to cancel off what factor? Look at your value of x. This is x equal to 7. Bring 7 to the left. It's x minus 7. So this is your key here. This means you have to cancel off x minus 7 factor. And how to find x minus 7 at the denominator? Look at the numbers, 3 and 21. Is there a common factor that you can factorize? There is, and the value is 3. Factorize 3 and you see the x minus 7 factor. And then cancel that off. Once you have cancelled that off, now you can substitute in the value of 7 without any problem. And there's no more 0 over 0. And then what's left is just 10 over 3. Example 4. First step is to substitute the value of x inside it. And what you get is 2 minus square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. and then 4 minus 4 is also 0. You get 0 over 0. Remember, there are two things that we can do. First one is to factorize, the other one is to multiply with conjugates. But remember, when there's a surd, you have to multiply with the conjugate. Right, so what is the conjugate that you have to multiply with? Is it 4 minus x or is it 2 minus square root of x? So to find the conjugate that we want to multiply it with, we have to look at the function with the surd. And the function with the surd is on top here. So 2 minus square root of x, what will be the conjugate? The conjugate that we have to multiply it with is just follow the same numbers behind and in front, and then just change the sign. If it's a minus here, then you have to write plus. If it's a plus here, then we have to write minus. Okay? Remember, you have to multiply on top and also below with the same function, so that the value that we have multiplied here now is just equal to 1. Remember, we are not changing the value of the question, but we are changing the form of the question. Remember my tips. Only expand conjugate partners. What do I mean by conjugate partners? Is the one with the surds and the opposite signs. So when you expand, or you can also use a faster method that I have shown you before, and that faster method is to use the formula a squared minus b squared. So according to the formula, a minus b times a plus b. So look at in the middle, one is minus, another one is plus. So our a is 2 and our b is surd x. So according to the formula, it's just a squared minus b squared. So this means our numerator can be 2 squared minus surd x squared. And the tips that I've given you is, if you expanded the numerator, you don't have to expand the denominator. So after you have expanded, what you get is 4 minus x, because surd x power 2 is just x power 1. And here, remember, after you have multiplied with conjugates or after you have factorized, you have to cancel off at least one factor before you substitute the value of x to find your value of limit. Now, you have not cancelled off a factor. So, what is that factor that you need to cancel off? You can see clearly here, and that factor is just 4 minus x. Remember, when you have cancelled off the numerator and there's nothing left, it just means it's 1, because 4 minus x is multiplied with 1. So after you cancel off 4 minus x, what's left is just 1. And it's over 2 plus surd x, but you substitute your value of 4 inside. And your answer is 1 over 4. Thank you for watching.